You should not have come here. Cassandra's voice cut through the tension in the great hall like a blade through silk. She stood at the top of the stone staircase, her posture rigid, her green eyes fixed on the man who had dared to enter her territory without invitation, the Alpha King, Dominic Thorne himself. His reputation preceded him like a shadow that swallowed light. Ruthless, calculating, undefeated in both politics and combat. And now he stood in her hall, surrounded by her guards, looking entirely too comfortable for a man who had just committed an act that could spark a war between packs. The silence that followed her words was thick enough to choke on. Cassandra descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, her boots echoing against ancient stone. She had built this fortress from nothing, claimed this territory when everyone said a woman without noble blood could never hold it, proved every single doubter wrong through sheer will and strategic brilliance. And she would be damned if she let some arrogant king waltz in and threaten everything she had sacrificed to create. Dominic's dark eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made something in her chest tighten uncomfortably. He was taller than she had imagined, broader, the kind of physical presence that commanded attention without effort. His black hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face, the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. A reminder that even kings bled. He wore no crown, no ostentatious display of power. He did not need to. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. Alpha Cassandra. His voice was deep, measured, with an edge that suggested he was not accustomed to being challenged. I appreciate the dramatic entrance, but we both know why I am here. She reached the bottom of the stairs and crossed her arms, positioning herself between him and the doorway that led to the eastern wing. The wing that contained the vault. The deep vault that held secrets her grandmother had died protecting. Enlighten me, she said coldly. Because from where I stand, you have violated pack law, crossed territorial boundaries without permission, and brought armed guards into my home. Any one of those offenses would justify me tearing out your throat where you stand. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Amusement? Respect? It vanished too quickly to identify. You could try, he said quietly. But I think we both know how that would end. The guards around them shifted nervously. Cassandra's beta, Marcus, took a step forward, his hand moving toward the weapon at his hip. She raised one hand slightly, halting him without breaking eye contact with Dominic. Your confidence is admirable, she said. Also monumentally stupid. You are in my territory, surrounded by my wolves. Whatever you think you came here to accomplish, I promise you it ends with disappointment. Dominic tilted his head slightly, studying her with an focus that made her skin prickle. I came for the archives, he said simply. The sealed records your grandmother kept in the Eastern Vault. I need access to them. Tonight. Cassandra laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Absolutely not. This is not a request. Then it is a suicide mission. She took a step closer, closing the distance between them until she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, smell the scent of pine and smoke that clung to him. Those archives are sealed for a reason. My grandmother spent her entire life protecting what is in that vault. I will honor her wishes, even if it means starting a war with you. Something shifted in his expression. The mask of controlled authority cracked just slightly, revealing something underneath that looked almost like urgency. Desperation, even. You do not understand what is at stake, he said, his voice dropping lower. There is a bloodline that was supposed to be extinct. Records that prove it survived. If the council discovers this before I do, before I can control the situation, it will not just be a war. It will be a purge. Every pack with even a drop of that bloodline will be systematically eliminated. Men, women, children. No exceptions. Cassandra felt her heart skip, but she kept her expression neutral. Why should I believe you? Because, Dominic said, leaning in until his lips were mere inches from her ear, his voice barely a whisper that somehow felt more intimate than any touch. Your grandmother sent me a letter before she died. She told me that when the time came, her granddaughter would know what to do, that you would understand the stakes, that you would have the key. Cassandra stepped back as if he had struck her. Her mind raced. Her grandmother had never mentioned any letter, never mentioned any connection to the Alpha King, never mentioned anything except one directive, given with her dying breath. Never use the silver key, never open the chamber, never let anyone know what we truly are. I do not know what you are talking about, Cassandra said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Dominic's eyes narrowed. You are lying. I am protecting what is mine. Even if it destroys you? He moved closer again, and this time she did not step back. Even if it destroys everyone you care about? Because that letter your grandmother sent me, it did not just contain information about the archives. It contained a prophecy, a warning, and a name. Your name. Cassandra. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Around them, the guards had gone completely still, sensing the shift in atmosphere, the sudden weight of something much larger than territorial disputes or political posturing. This was personal. This was dangerous. This was exactly what her grandmother had spent her entire life trying to prevent. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Cassandra's fingers unconsciously moved to the chain around her neck, hidden beneath her shirt. The silver key hung there, cold against her skin. She had worn it every day since her grandmother's death 3 years ago, a constant reminder of a promise she had made, a burden she carried alone. Leave, she said quietly. Now, before I do something we will both regret. Dominic did not move. I cannot do that. Then you are a fool. Perhaps. He held her gaze, and something in his expression softened almost, imperceptibly. But I am a fool with information you need. Your grandmother did not just hide records in that vault, Cassandra. She hid the truth about your heritage, about why you have never been able to shift completely, why your wolf feels like it is trapped behind a wall you cannot break through, why every full moon leaves you in agony while other wolves celebrate their transformation. Cassandra's breath caught. How could he possibly know about that? She had never told anyone, had hidden. The shame and pain of her incomplete shifts, the way her wolf clawed at her insides but could never fully emerge. It was her deepest secret, the vulnerability she could never afford to show. Not as an alpha, not as a woman fighting for respect in a world that wanted to see her fail. You know nothing about me, she whispered, but the words felt hollow. I know more than you think. Dominic reached into his jacket slowly, carefully, aware that any sudden movement could provoke an attack from her. Guards. He withdrew a sealed envelope, aged and yellowed, her grandmother's handwriting across the front. For Cassandra, to be opened when the king comes calling. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. The paper felt fragile between her fingers, as if it might crumble into dust at any moment. She wanted to open it, needed to open it, but she was also terrified of what it might contain, what truths might spill out and shatter the foundation of everything she believed about herself. The council meets in 3 days, Dominic said quietly. In 3 days, they will vote on whether to authorize a full investigation into the Silverblood lineage. If they vote yes, and they will, every pack in the territories will be subject to blood testing. Anyone who carries the Silverblood marker will be executed immediately. No trial, no mercy. Your grandmother knew this day was coming. That is why she prepared. That is why she contacted me. Why you? Cassandra demanded, her voice raw. Why? Would she trust you, of all people? The Alpha King who built his empire on the graves of those who opposed him? For the first time, genuine emotion flickered across Dominic's face. Pain, regret, something that looked almost like grief. Because 20 years ago, my sister was marked as Silverblood. The council came for her in the night. My father, the former king, handed her over without hesitation to prove his loyalty, to prove our bloodline was pure. I was 15 years old. I watched them drag her away, screaming, and I did nothing. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with shame and old wounds. Cassandra felt her anger waver, complicated by an unwanted surge of empathy. She knew what it was like to lose family, to carry guilt that never quite faded. "Your grandmother saved my sister," Dominic continued. "She hid her, created false records, helped her escape to the human territories where the council cannot reach. She saved her life when my own father was willing to sacrifice her for political convenience. So when your grandmother sent me that letter, when she asked me to protect you when the time came, I did not hesitate. I owe her a debt I can never repay." Cassandra's throat tightened. She looked down at the envelope in her hands, at her grandmother's familiar script. The woman who had raised her after her parents died, who had taught her everything about strength, strategy, survival, who had also kept so many secrets. "If I open this vault," she said. Slowly, "if I use the key and give you access to whatever is in that chamber, what happens then? What happens to me? To my pack?" "That depends on what we find," Dominic admitted. "But I promise you this. Whatever happens, whatever we discover, I will protect you. With my life, with my crown, with everything I have. Your grandmother trusted me. I am asking you to do the same." It was madness. She barely knew this man, had every reason to distrust him, and yet something in her chest, deeper than logic or caution, was pulling her toward him, urging her to trust, to believe, to take the leap. Her wolf, usually so quiet, so trapped, suddenly stirred. A presence she had not fully felt in years pressing against her consciousness, not with pain or frustration, but with recognition, with longing, with certainty. "Mate," it whispered. Cassandra's eyes widened in shock. She staggered back a step, one hand pressed to her chest, as if she could physically hold back the truth that was suddenly, terrifyingly obvious. The pull she felt toward Dominic was not just attraction or political strategy. It was the mate bond. The connection that her grandmother had told her she might never experience because of her incomplete wolf. The bond that was supposed to be impossible for someone like her. Dominic caught her elbow, steadying her, and the moment his skin touched hers, electricity shot through her entire body. She gasped, and she saw her own shock reflected in his eyes. He felt it, too. "Impossible," she breathed. "Nothing is impossible," he said roughly. "Not when fate decides to intervene." She pulled away from his touch, needing distance, needing space to think. But her mind was spinning, fragments of her grandmother's warning suddenly taking on new meaning. The key is not just to a chamber, child. It is to understanding who you are. But understanding comes with a price. Once you know, you can never unknow. Once you open that door, everything changes. "I need time," Cassandra said, hating how unsteady her voice sounded. "Time is the one thing we do not have," Dominic replied. "The council meets in 3 days. We need to know what is in that vault before then. We need to prepare our defense, gather evidence, build a strategy. Every hour we delay puts you at greater risk. And if I refuse? If I decide the risk is too great?" His jaw tightened. "Then I will do what I must to protect you, even if that means going through you to get to that vault." It was a threat, clear and unambiguous, but it was also, somehow, a promise. He would protect her even from herself if necessary, even if it meant she would hate him for it. Cassandra looked at Marcus, her loyal beta who had stood by her through every challenge, every crisis. He met her gaze steadily, and she saw the question there. "What do you want to do, Alpha?" The decision was hers. She turned back to Dominic, straightening her shoulders, channeling every ounce of authority she possessed. "If I do, we do it my way. My territory, my rules. You and your guards will be escorted to the guest wing. You will remain there under guard until I decide what happens next. You will not move through my fortress without permission. You will not speak to my pack members without my presence. And you will sure as hell not make demands in my home. Are we clear?" A slow smile spread across Dominic's face, transforming his severe features into something almost handsome. Crystal clear, Alpha Cassandra. Good. She signaled to Marcus. Show the king and his men to the western wing. Make sure they have everything they need. And make sure they understand that if they try to leave those quarters before I summon them, they will be treated as hostile threats. Marcus nodded, stepping forward to gesture toward the hallway. Dominic's guards moved to follow, but Dominic himself remained still, his eyes locked on Cassandra. One more thing, he said quietly. The mate bond. You felt it too. Do not try to deny it. She lifted her chin defiantly. What I felt or did not feel is irrelevant. You came here for the archives, not for me. I came here for both, he said simply. Your grandmother's letter was very clear about that. The key to the vault and the key to your heart are one and the same. You cannot unlock one without facing the other. Before she could respond, before she could even process that statement, he turned and followed his guards out of the hall, leaving her standing alone in the echoing space, the envelope clutched in her trembling hands. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The moment the heavy doors closed behind Dominic and his entourage, Cassandra's carefully maintained composure crumbled. She sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, the envelope still gripped in her hands, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Marcus was at her side immediately, his presence steady and grounding. Talk to me, Cass, he said, using the nickname only her closest friends were permitted. What just happened in here? Everything, she whispered. Everything just changed, and I do not know if I can stop it. She looked up at him, at the man who had been her friend since childhood, who had supported her claim to alpha status when everyone else called her foolish and doomed to fail. He is my mate, Marcus. The Alpha King is my mate. Marcus's eyes widened. Are you certain? My wolf recognized him. After years of silence, years of being trapped and incomplete, she finally spoke. And what she said was, mate. She laughed bitterly. Of all the impossible, catastrophic timing, of all the men in all the territories. That is not how the mate bond works, Marcus said gently. You do not get to choose. Fate chooses for you. Then fate has a twisted sense of humor. She stood abruptly, pacing back and forth across the hall, her mind racing through strategies and possibilities. He knows about my incomplete shifts, about my wolf being trapped. How is that even possible? I never told anyone outside my inner circle. Marcus frowned. If your grandmother's letter is legitimate, if she really did communicate with him before her death, she might have told him. She might have thought he needed to understand what he was dealing with. What I am dealing with, Cassandra corrected sharply. This is my life, my secret, my burden, not his. Is it, though? Marcus asked carefully. If what he says is true, if the council really is planning to investigate the Silverblood lineage, then this affects him too. This affects everyone. Cassandra stopped pacing, the weight of reality settling over her like a heavy cloak. Marcus was right. This was bigger than her pride or her fear. If Dominic was telling the truth about the council's plans, then every wolf with even a trace of Silverblood heritage was in danger. And if her grandmother had kept records about that lineage, if she had preserved evidence that the council wanted destroyed, then those records could be the difference between survival and extinction for countless innocent wolves. She looked down at the envelope again. Her grandmother's handwriting seemed to blur and swim before her eyes. The woman had always been so careful, so protective. She had raised Cassandra to be strong, independent, to never rely on anyone else for her survival. And yet she had reached out to Dominic, had trusted him with secrets, had apparently orchestrated this entire confrontation. Why? What had her grandmother known that Cassandra still did not? There was only one way to find out. With hands that shook only slightly, Cassandra broke the seal on the envelope and withdrew the letter inside. The paper was thick, expensive, covered in her grandmother's careful script. My dearest Cassandra, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and the time I feared has finally arrived. I have spent my entire life protecting you from a truth that I knew would one day demand to be acknowledged. I thought I had more time. I always think I have more time. But the future has a way of arriving whether we are ready for not. You are not who you think you are, child. The bloodline that runs through your veins is older and more powerful than almost any other in the territories. You are the last surviving heir of the silver bloodline, not a distant descendant, not a carrier of diluted heritage. You are the direct heir, the true alpha of a lineage that the council declared extinct 60 years ago because they feared what we could become. Your mother was Silverblood, your father was Silverblood, and I, your grandmother, am the woman who helped orchestrate their deaths to save you. Cassandra's vision went dark at the edges. The words on the page seemed to writhe and twist, refusing to make sense even as their meaning crashed over her like a tidal wave. Her grandmother had killed her parents? The woman who had raised her with such love and dedication had murdered her own daughter? Cass? Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. Cassandra, you need to breathe. You are not breathing. She gasped, dragging air into lungs that felt like they were wrapped in iron bands. Her hands had gone numb. The letter fluttered to the ground, and Marcus caught it before it could scatter. Do not, she managed to choke out. Do not read it. I need to know what is happening, Marcus said, but he set the letter aside, focusing his attention on her instead. What did it say? She killed them. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. My grandmother killed my parents. She admitted it. She said she orchestrated their deaths to save me. Marcus went very still. That cannot be right. Your grandmother loved your mother. I remember how devastated she was when they died. That was not an act, Cass. I was there. I saw her grief. Then why would she write this? Cassandra demanded. Why would she confess to something so monstrous? Unless it was true. She bent down and snatched up the letter again, forcing herself to read further, even though every word felt like a knife to the heart. The council discovered that your parents were planning to reveal the truth about the Silverblood lineage, to prove that we were not the monsters they claimed, that our power did not corrupt, that our strength did not make us dangerous. They wanted to fight the propaganda, to reclaim our heritage. I begged them not to. I told them it was too dangerous, that the council would never allow it, but they would not listen. They believed in truth and justice and all those beautiful, naive ideals that get good people killed. So I made a choice, the hardest choice of my life. I contacted the council myself. I told them where your parents would be, when they would be vulnerable. And I made a deal. In exchange for their deaths, you would be spared. You would be hidden. Your heritage would be buried so deep that no one would ever think to look for it. I killed my own daughter to save my granddaughter, and I have lived with that choice every single day since. I have carried that guilt like a stone in my chest, growing heavier with each breath. But I would make the same choice again, 1,000 times over, because you are alive. You are strong. You are everything they could have been and more. The incomplete shifts, the trapped wolf, the pain you have endured every full moon. These are not flaws or weaknesses. They are protections I put in place. Seals I created to hide your true nature from anyone who might be looking. Your wolf is not incomplete, Cassandra. She is bound, locked away behind barriers I constructed to keep you safe. But those barriers cannot hold forever. As you grow stronger, as you come into your power, they will begin to crack. The pain will get worse. The pressure will build. And eventually, if you do not learn to control what you are, those barriers will shatter all at once. And the transformation that follows will destroy you and everyone around you. That is why I contacted Dominic Thorne, why I trusted him with this knowledge, why I asked him to come for you when the time was right. He has resources I do not, connections I cannot access, and he has a personal stake in seeing the Silverblood lineage survive. His sister is Silverblood. His mate is Silverblood. Though neither of you knows it yet, fate has bound you together for a reason. You will need each other in the days to come. Not just to survive, but to change everything. The key around your neck opens the vault in the eastern chamber. Inside, you will find the complete records of the Silverblood lineage. Names, histories, bloodlines that stretch back 1,000 years. But you will also find something else. The instructions for removing the seals I placed on your wolf. The ritual that will finally allow you to shift completely, to access your full power. It is dangerous. It will be painful. And once you begin, there is no going back. But it is also necessary, because the council is coming, my darling girl. They are coming, and this time they will not be satisfied with records or documentation. They will demand blood. Your blood. And the only way to survive is to become what they fear most. Become the Silverblood Alpha your parents dreamed of. Become the leader our people need. Become the mate that Dominic Thorne has been searching for his entire life without knowing it. Trust him, Cassandra. Trust yourself. And forgive me, if you can. All my love. Always. Your grandmother. The letter ended there. The final words slightly smudged, as if her grandmother had been crying when she wrote them. Cassandra read it through twice more, then a third time, trying to absorb the magnitude of what had just been revealed. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her identity, her family, all of it was a lie. Or not a lie, exactly. A carefully constructed protection. A sacrifice made out of desperate love. Slowly, she stood, the letter clutched in her hand, and walked to the window that overlooked the eastern wing of the fortress. The vault was there, hidden behind layers of stone and enchantments. Waiting. The key around her neck felt impossibly heavy. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked quietly. Cassandra pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the moon rise over the distant mountains. A waning gibbous, not yet full, but close enough that she could feel the familiar ache beginning in her bones. The pain that heralded another incomplete transformation. Another night of agony while her wolf clawed uselessly at barriers she could not break. "I am going to open the vault," she said finally. "I am going to learn the truth about what I am. And then I am going to decide whether to trust the Alpha King or destroy him. And if he really is your mate." She closed her eyes, letting the weight of that reality settle over her. "Then I suppose we will find out if fate can survive being defied. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." 2 hours later, Cassandra stood outside the guest wing where Dominic and his guards were housed. She had changed into practical clothing, pants, and a fitted shirt that would not restrict movement if things went badly. The silver key hung outside her shirt now, visible, a declaration of intent. She had ordered most of the guards away. What was about to happen did not need an audience. Marcus stood beside her, armed and alert, but she had made him promise not to interfere unless she gave the signal. This confrontation had to happen on her terms. She knocked once, sharply, and did not wait for permission before pushing open the door. Dominic was standing by the window, his jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. He turned as she entered, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I read the letter," she said without preamble. "All of it." "And?" His voice was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into loose fists. "And I have questions. Many questions. But they can wait." She reached up and lifted the chain over her head, the silver key swinging free. "You wanted access to the vault. You are about to get it. But understand this, Dominic. Once we cross this threshold, once we open that chamber, there is no going back. Whatever we find in there, whatever truths come out, will change everything. For both of us. Are you ready for that?" He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping just in front of her. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell that intoxicating scent of pine and smoke that made her wolf stir restlessly behind her barriers. "I have been ready for this my entire life," he said quietly. The question is, are you? She met his gaze steadily, refusing to let him see how terrified she was. How the thought of accessing her full power, of becoming what her grandmother described, filled her with equal parts longing and dread. I guess we are about to find out. She turned and walked out of the room, knowing he would follow. Knowing that from this moment forward, their fates were bound together in ways that went far beyond the mate bond or political necessity. They were about to uncover secrets that had been buried for generations. Secrets that people had killed to protect. Secrets that might very well kill them both before this was over. The eastern wing of the fortress was older than the rest, built from darker stone, the air thick with the weight of history and magic. Cassandra led Dominic through corridors that grew progressively narrower, deeper, until they reached a door that looked like it had not been opened in decades. Dust coated the handle. Cobwebs stretched across the frame. But the lock was silver and pristine, recently polished, and it matched the key. Perfectly. My grandmother came here, Cassandra said softly, running her fingers over the lock. Even after she sealed it, even after she swore never to open it again, she came here and polished this lock, keeping it ready, preparing for this moment. She knew you would need it, Dominic said. She knew I would come. Cassandra inserted the key and turned it. The lock opened with a soft click that seemed to echo through the corridor like thunder. The door swung inward, revealing stairs that descended into darkness. The air that rushed out was cold and smelled of parchment and old magic. Without hesitation, Cassandra descended. Dominic followed, and behind them Marcus took up position at the door, standing guard against anyone who might try to interrupt. The stairs went down far longer than should have been possible given the layout of the fortress. Magic, Cassandra realized. Her grandmother had hidden this chamber not just physically but dimensionally, folding space to create a pocket that existed outside normal architecture. At the bottom of the stairs, they emerged into a chamber that took Cassandra's breath away. It was enormous, far larger than the entire footprint of the fortress above. Shelves stretched up into shadows, lined with books and scrolls and artifacts that glowed with faint luminescence. But what dominated the room was a massive circular altar in the center, carved from white stone, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when looked at. Directly, and standing at the altar, as if waiting for them, was a figure made of silver light. It coalesced slowly, taking the shape of a woman Cassandra recognized even though she had been dead for 3 years. Her grandmother. Not really her, Cassandra understood. A magical construct. A message left behind. "Hello, my darling," the figure said. And the voice was perfect, exact, filled with all the warmth and love Cassandra remembered. "If you are seeing this, then you have opened the vault. You have brought the Alpha King. And you are ready, finally, to learn what you are." Tears burned in Cassandra's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I read your letter. I know you killed my parents. I know you sealed my wolf. I know you have been lying to me my entire life." The figure smiled sadly. "Yes, I have carried those sins gladly. But now it is time for you to understand why. Time for you to see what your parents saw. What they died trying to protect." The figure gestured and the air shimmered. Images appeared, memories made tangible through magic. Cassandra saw wolves running through ancient forests, saw cities built of silver and crystal, saw a civilization of silverbloods that had once been glorious, powerful, free. Then she saw the war, saw the other packs banding together, driven by fear and jealousy and propaganda, saw the systematic destruction of everything the Silverbloods had built, saw children torn from their parents' arms, saw pyres burning with bodies that would never shift again, saw the near-total extinction of a people whose only crime was being more powerful than those around them. The council rewrote history, the figure of her grandmother said. They claimed the Silverbloods were monsters, tyrants, dangerous. They said the purge was necessary, that it was justice. But it was genocide, plain and simple. And your parents wanted the world to know the truth. "So you killed them," Cassandra whispered, unable to keep the accusation from her.
Voice. To save you, the figure replied. Because you were the last pure bloodline, the last hope for our people, and I could not let you die for idealism, no matter how beautiful that idealism was. The memories shifted again. Cassandra saw herself as an infant, crying in her grandmother's arms. Saw the ritual her grandmother performed, weaving layers of magic around the child's core, sealing away the wolf that would have marked her as Silverblood to anyone with the knowledge to look. Saw the price her grandmother paid for that magic, the years of her life she sacrificed to power the seals. The barriers I created were never meant to be permanent, the figure explained. They were meant to last until you were strong enough, wise enough, powerful enough to claim your heritage and survive. Until you had built something worth protecting. A pack. A territory. A foundation that could not be easily torn away. The figure turned to look at Dominic. And until you found your mate. Because you will need him, Cassandra. The ritual to break the seals, to free your wolf, it will try to consume you. The power that has been trapped for so long will surge forth all at once, and without an anchor, without someone to ground you in reality, it will tear you apart from the inside out. Dominic stepped forward, his expression serious. What do I need to do? The figure studied him carefully. You need to complete the mate bond. Fully. Not just acknowledgement or attraction, but the deep binding that joins two souls together. It will give her the strength to survive the transformation. Give her something to hold on to when the power threatens to overwhelm. Cassandra shook her head violently. No, absolutely not. I am not completing a mate bond with someone I barely know just because some magical construct says it is necessary. You would rather die? Dominic asked quietly. I would rather find another way. She turned to the figure of her grandmother. There has to be another option. Some other anchor. There is not, the figure said simply. I researched for years, trying to find an alternative. This is the only way. Complete the bond, break the seals, claim your power, or keep the barriers in place and slowly suffocate your wolf until she dies, and you along with her. The choice was impossible. Unthinkable. Cassandra felt trapped between equally terrible options, with no clear path forward. How long do I have? She asked. Before the barriers fail on their own? The figure's expression grew grave. Days. Perhaps a week at most. The strain of concealing your presence from the Alpha King. The stress of this confrontation. It has weakened the seals faster than I anticipated. They are already cracking. If you do not act soon, the choice will be taken from you, and the consequences will be catastrophic. Cassandra turned away, unable to look at either the magical construct or Dominic. Her mind raced through possibilities, searching for some alternative, some way to maintain control of a situation that was spiraling further out of her grasp with each passing moment. Behind her, she heard Dominic speak quietly to the figure. The council meeting. In 3 days. Will we have time to prepare? That depends, the figure replied, on how quickly Cassandra can accept what she is, how quickly she can trust what fate has given her. The records you need are here. The evidence that will prove the Silverblood lineage was persecuted unjustly. But that evidence means nothing if the last living heir is dead. Cassandra felt something inside her crack. The careful control she had maintained for so long. The walls she had built around her emotions, her fears, her desperate longing for something more than the half-life she had been living. It all came crashing down at once. She turned back to face them. And for the first time in years, she let someone see her truly vulnerable. I am terrified, she admitted, her voice breaking. I am terrified of what I might become. Terrified that I will not be strong enough. Terrified that opening myself to this power will mean losing everything I have built, everything I am. Dominic closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes, and what she saw there was not pity or judgment. It was understanding, acceptance, a reflection of her own fear, tempered by absolute certainty.
You think I am not terrified? He said. I am the Alpha King. I have fought in more battles than I can count, negotiated treaties that held together by threads, made decisions that determined the fates of thousands. And nothing has ever scared me as much as standing here looking at you and knowing that if I fail you, if I am not strong enough to be what you need, you will die. My mate will die before I even had the chance to know her. So yes, Cassandra, I am terrified, but I am also here, and I am not going anywhere. She wanted to pull away, to maintain her independence, her pride, her carefully constructed armor. But something in his words, in the raw honesty of his fear, made her stay, made her lean into his touch instead of fighting it. I do not know how to do this, she whispered. How to trust someone this completely. How to let someone in. Neither do I, he admitted. I have spent my entire life building walls, maintaining control, never showing weakness. The idea of binding myself to someone, of giving them the power to destroy me, it goes against every instinct I have. But I look at you, and those instincts do not matter. Nothing matters except making sure you survive this. The figure of her grandmother watched them with an expression of profound relief. This is what your parents wanted, she said softly. Not just survival, not just preserving the bloodline, but love, trust, partnership. The things the council tried to take from all of us. The things worth fighting for. Cassandra closed her eyes, letting Dominic's presence anchor her, letting herself feel the mate bond that thrummed between them, stronger now that they were both acknowledging it. It felt like coming home, like finding a part of herself she had not realized was missing. If we do this, she said finally, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. If we complete the bond and break the seals, it cannot just be about survival. It cannot just be a political strategy or a magical necessity. I will not bind myself to someone out of obligation. Then, what do you want it to be? Dominic asked. I want it to be real, she said fiercely. I want it to be choice. Yes, fate brought us together. Yes, necessity is pushing us forward. But I need to know that you are choosing this, choosing me. Not because of what I represent or what I can do for your political agenda, but because of who I am. His thumb stroked over her cheekbones, a gesture so gentle it made her chest ache. I have been choosing you since the moment I walked into your hall and saw you standing there like a queen defending her kingdom. I have been choosing you with every word we have exchanged, every challenge you have thrown at me. The mate bond just gave me a name for what I was already feeling. You are fierce and brilliant, and so damn stubborn that negotiating with enemy alphas is easier than getting you to admit you need help. And I would choose you 1,000 times over, Cassandra. Mate bond or not, Silverblood or not, Alpha or Omega, I would choose you. The words hit her like a physical force, breaking through the last of her resistance. She surged forward and kissed him, pouring everything she could not say into the press of her lips against his. Dominic responded immediately, one hand sliding into her hair, the other wrapping around her waist and pulling her impossibly closer. The mate bond flared between them, white-hot and undeniable. And Cassandra felt something inside her chest crack open, letting him in, letting the connection deepen and strengthen until she could feel his heartbeat as if it were her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the figure of her grandmother was smiling. The bond has begun, she said. But to complete it fully, to give Cassandra the anchor she needs, you must perform the claiming ritual. It is written in the grimoire on the altar. Follow the instructions exactly. And Cassandra, when you break the seals and your wolf emerges fully for the first time, remember who you are. Remember what you have built. Let that guide you through the transformation. Let Dominic guide you. Let love be stronger than fear. The figure began to fade, the magic that sustained it finally running out. I am so proud of you, my darling girl. I am sorry for the pain I caused. Sorry for the lies. But I would make the same choices again to see you standing here. strong and alive and about to claim your destiny. Your parents would be so proud. I hope someday you can forgive me. I forgive you, Cassandra whispered. But the figure had already vanished, leaving them alone in the vast chamber surrounded by the collected history of a people who had almost been erased from existence. Marcus's voice echoed down the stairs. Cass, everything okay down there? We are fine, she called back. We need some time. Keep everyone away from the vault. She turned to the altar where an ancient grimoire lay open, the pages covered in flowing script and intricate diagrams. The claiming ritual, the instructions that would complete the mate bond and give her the strength to survive what came next. Dominic stood beside her, reading over her shoulder. It is not as complicated as I expected, he said. Blood, words, intent. The usual components of like and bonding magic. The usual components that will tie us together for the rest of our lives, Cassandra corrected. There is no undoing this. No going back. Are you absolutely certain? He turned her to face him, his expression solemn. I have never been more certain of anything. But you need to be sure, Cassandra. Not because of prophecy or necessity. Because you want this. She thought about everything that had happened in the last few hours. About the revelations that had shattered her understanding of her own life. About the impossible choice she was being forced to make. About the man standing in front of her, who had somehow, in the space of a single evening, become the most important person in her world. I want this, she said. Firmly. I want you. Let us do the ritual. What followed was both simple and profound. They spoke the ancient words written in the grimoire, their voices echoing in the vast chamber. They each drew a small blade across their palms, mingling their blood in a silver bowl that sat on the altar. And then, as the final component of the ritual required, they each spoke a truth that bound them more surely than any magic. I choose you, Dominic said, his dark eyes holding hers. I choose your strength and your vulnerability. I choose your stubborn pride and your hidden fears. I choose every part of you, known and unknown, now and forever. I choose you, Cassandra replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I choose your loyalty and your ruthlessness. I choose the burdens you carry and the wounds you hide. I choose to stand beside you, to fight with you, to build something better than what came before. Now and forever. The magic sealed around them like a physical force. Cassandra felt the mate bond lock into place, complete and unbreakable, and with it came a rush of sensation and emotion that nearly brought her to her knees. She could feel Dominic's presence in her mind, not intruding or controlling, but there. A constant awareness. A tether that would hold her steady no matter what storms came. Dominic caught her as her knees buckled, holding her steady. I have you, he murmured against her hair. I have you, mate. You are not alone in this. Cassandra clung to him, letting herself be vulnerable in a way she had never allowed before. Letting him see her fear and her hope and her desperate wish that this would be enough. That love and trust really could be stronger than the darkness that threatened to consume her. The seals, she said finally, pulling back enough to look at the grimoire. The instructions for breaking them. We need to prepare. Dominic nodded, but his hands remained on her waist, as if he could not quite bring himself to let go. According to your grandmother's message, we have days at most. We should do it now, tonight, before the council can move against us, before anything else can go wrong. Now? Cassandra's heart hammered against her ribs. Are you serious? I have not prepared, have not said goodbye to my pack, have not made arrangements in case something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong, Dominic said with absolute conviction. I will not let it. The bond is complete. I am here. Everything else is just details. She wanted to argue, to demand more time, more preparation, more control. But she could feel the truth of what her grandmother's construct had said. The seals were cracking. She could feel them now that she knew what to look for. hairline fractures in the magical barriers that had held her wolf captive for so long, pressure building behind a dam that was about to break. If she waited, if she tried to delay, the choice would be taken from her. Better to break the seals on her terms, with Dominic beside her, with the mate bond to anchor her. Better to face the transformation with some measure of control than to be caught off guard when the barriers finally failed. "All right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All right. We do it now. Tell me what I need to do." The ritual was complex, requiring chalk symbols drawn on the floor, candles placed at specific points around the circle, and a series of incantations that had to be spoken in perfect sequence. Dominic helped her prepare, his movements efficient and sure. He had clearly done extensive research on Silverblood magic. Cassandra suspected her grandmother had sent him more than just the one letter. She had likely sent him everything he would need to understand what he was dealing with, to understand what Cassandra was. When everything was ready, Cassandra stepped into the center of the circle. The symbols seemed to glow beneath her feet, responding to her presence, recognizing the Silverblood magic that ran through her veins. "Once I begin the incantation," Dominic said, "the seals will start to break. The process cannot be stopped or reversed. Your wolf will be freed, and with her, all the power your grandmother locked away. It will hurt, Cassandra. According to the grimoire, it will hurt worse than anything you have experienced. But you have to hold on. You have to stay conscious and stay yourself. Can you do that?" "I do not know," she admitted, "but I am going to. Try." He stepped forward and kissed her once more, hard and desperate, and full of everything he could not put into words. Then he moved to stand at the edge of the circle, the grimoire open in his hands, and began to read. The words were in a language Cassandra did not recognize, ancient and powerful, each syllable making the air vibrate with barely contained energy. She felt the first seal crack with a sensation like ice breaking, a sharp pain in her chest that made her gasp. Then the second seal. The third. Each one breaking with increasing speed, the barriers her grandmother had so carefully constructed crumbling away like sand in a flood. And behind those barriers, her wolf stirred. Not the quiet, trapped presence Cassandra had always known, but something massive and powerful and ancient. Something that had been sleeping for far too long and was now finally, gloriously, awakening. The pain hit like a tidal wave. Cassandra screamed, her body convulsing as power flooded through. Channels that had never been meant to hold so much. She felt her bones beginning to shift, her muscles tearing and reforming, her skin burning as if she were being flayed alive. It was transformation, but not like anything she had experienced before. This was complete, total, irreversible. Her wolf was coming, and she was bringing with her the full weight of the Silverblood legacy. Dominic's voice never faltered, reading the incantations with perfect precision, even as Cassandra's screams filled the chamber. But she could feel him through the bond, feel his fear and his determination and his absolute refusal to let her face this alone. That connection was the only thing keeping her grounded, the only thing preventing her consciousness from being swept away in the tide of power and pain. The transformation seemed to last forever, and no time at all. When it finally completed, when the last seal shattered and her wolf emerged fully for the first time, Cassandra found herself on her hands and knees in the center of the circle, panting, her body covered in sweat and trembling with exhaustion. But she was still herself, still conscious, still in control. And when she looked up, meeting Dominic's eyes, she saw her reflection in them. Silver eyes where green had been, a faint luminescence to her skin, an aura of power that made the air around her shimmer. She stood slowly, testing her new body, and found that it responded perfectly. Strength flooded through her limbs. Her senses had sharpened to an impossible degree. She could hear Marcus's heartbeat all the way up at the vault entrance, could smell the unique scent signatures of every wolf in her pack, even from this distance. could feel the network of ley lines that ran beneath the fortress, ancient channels of magic that her grandmother had tapped into to power the seals. "How do you feel?" Dominic asked carefully, not moving from his position at the edge of the circle. "Smart." He was giving her space to adjust, to learn her new limits before approaching. "Powerful," she said, and her voice came out different. Richer, layered with harmonics that had not been there before. "I feel powerful and whole. For the first time in my life, I feel complete." She looked down at her hands, watching silver light dance across her skin. My grandmother was right. The barriers were not just protecting me from others, they were protecting others from me. This power, it could so easily be dangerous. "Which is why you have me," Dominic said. He stepped into the circle cautiously, approaching her the way someone might approach a wild animal. Respectful, alert, but unafraid. "Which is why you have the pack you built. The foundation your grandmother talked about. You are not defined by power, Cassandra. You are defined by how you choose to use it." She reached out and took his hand, marveling at how clearly she could feel his emotions now. The bond had strengthened with her transformation. She could sense not just his surface feelings, but the deeper currents underneath. His absolute faith in her. His determination to protect her even from herself if necessary. His growing love that he had not yet put into words, but that resonated through every fiber of their connection. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being here, for not running when you saw what I could become." "I would never run from you," he said simply. "You are my mate, my alpha, the woman I choose above all others. Nothing you could become would change that." A noise from the top of the stairs interrupted them. Marcus's voice, urgent. "Cass, we have a situation. Multiple vehicles approaching the fortress. Unknown pack signatures. They are not friendly." Dominic's expression hardened instantly, shifting from tender mate to warrior king in a heartbeat. The council. They must have been monitoring for magical surges. The ritual, the breaking of the seals, it would have sent out a massive energy signature. Anyone with the right equipment would have detected it. Cassandra felt a cold fury settle over her. After everything she had just been through, after the revelations and the pain and the impossible choices, the council dared to show up at her door demanding answers. "How many?" she called up to Marcus. "At least 20, maybe more, heavily armed. And Cass, they have council enforcers with them, the ones with the binding collars." Binding collars. Devices designed to suppress a wolf's ability to shift, to access their power. They were painful, dehumanizing, and typically only used on wolves who had been convicted of serious crimes. The fact that the council had brought them meant they had already decided Cassandra was guilty. Already decided she needed to be contained. "This is not a diplomatic mission," Dominic said grimly. "This is an arrest, maybe an execution." "Let them try," Cassandra said, and silver light flared around her hands. "I just spent the last hour being torn apart and rebuilt. I am not going." Quietly. "We need a strategy," Dominic insisted. "The council enforcers are trained to fight Lycans. They will have weapons designed to counter supernatural abilities. We cannot just charge in." "Then what do you suggest?" He thought for a moment, his tactical mind clearly working through scenarios. "We use the records. Your grandmother said there was evidence here, proof that the Silverblood persecution was unjust. If we can present that to the council members, if we can force them to confront the truth, we might be able to prevent violence." "And if they refuse to listen?" Cassandra asked. "If they decide that destroying the evidence and killing me is easier than admitting they were wrong?" Dominic met her gaze steadily. "Then we fight, together, and we make sure the world knows what they did, what they are still doing." She nodded sharply. "Marcus, how long before they reach the main entrance?" 5 minutes, maybe less. Not enough time to gather the records. Not enough time to prepare a proper defense. They were about to face a force that had been hunting Silverbloods for generations, and they had nothing but each other and the truth. It would have to be enough. Cassandra grabbed Dominic's hand and ran for the stairs, her new strength making the climb effortless. Behind them, the vault remained open, the collected wisdom of her people waiting to be discovered. She would come back for it. She would preserve it. But first, she had to survive the next hour. They burst out of the eastern wing to find the entire fortress in controlled chaos. Her pack members were moving to defensive positions, weapons drawn, prepared to protect their alpha against any threat. Marcus met them in the main hall, his expression grim. They are at the gates. 3 council members, 17 enforcers, and someone I do not recognize. Human, I think. He is carrying some kind of scanning equipment. A witch hunter, Dominic said. They must have suspected Silverblood involvement. The equipment can detect magical signatures, confirm bloodlines. If he scans Cassandra now, after the transformation, there will be no hiding what she is. Then he does not get close enough to scan me, Cassandra said. Open the gates. Let them in. But everyone stays armed and ready. If this goes wrong, if they try to take me, you fight. You fight with everything you have. Understood? Her pack responded with a chorus of affirmative growls and nods. These wolves had followed her for years. Had trusted her leadership. Had built something worth protecting under her rule. They would not let some distant council tear that down without a fight. The gates swung open, and the council delegation entered. 3 wolves in formal robes, their faces hard and judgmental. The enforcers behind them were massive, clearly chosen for size and strength. And at the center, looking absurdly out of place in his khaki pants and equipment vest, was the human with the scanning device. Alpha Cassandra, the lead council member said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. Thank you for receiving us on such short notice. I am Councillor Henrik. We detected a significant magical disturbance originating from your territory. We are here to investigate and ensure there is no threat to pack security. The only threat here is the one you brought with you, Cassandra replied coldly. 20 armed enforcers for a simple investigation? How paranoid has the council become? Cautious, Henrik corrected. Not paranoid, cautious. There have been rumors, Alpha Cassandra. Rumors about your bloodline, about certain irregularities in your heritage documentation. We are simply here to verify the facts. By which you mean you are here to accuse me of being something I am not, based on nothing but suspicion and prejudice, Cassandra said. How very predictable. Henrik's expression hardened. You are aware that hiding Silverblood heritage is a crime punishable by death, that anyone found to be aiding or concealing such individuals faces the same penalty? I am aware that the council committed genocide 60 years ago and has been trying to cover it up ever since. Cassandra shot back. I am aware that you have persecuted and murdered innocent wolves based on nothing but fear of their power. I am aware that your laws are built on lies. The enforcers moved forward, hands going to weapons, but Henrik held up a hand stopping them. Bold accusations, Alpha. Do you have any evidence to support such claims? Or are you simply trying to deflect attention from your own questionable heritage? I have all the evidence I need, Cassandra said. Records that have been preserved for generations, testimonies, documentation of council crimes. And I have something else. I have the truth. She let the silver light flare in her eyes, no longer trying to hide what she was. Let them see. Let them know that their genocide had failed, that the silver bloodline survived, that she was here, powerful and unafraid, ready to reclaim what had been stolen. The reaction was immediate and violent. The human with the scanner let out a cry of alarm, his equipment screaming warnings. The enforcers surged forward, weapons drawn, and Henrik's face twisted with a combination of triumph and fear. Seize her, he commanded. Silverblood, confirmed Silverblood. Seize her immediately. Dominic moved faster than anyone expected, positioning himself between Cassandra and the advancing enforcers. His power rolled out in a wave that made even the council members step back. You will not touch my mate, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You will not lay hands on her. You will not threaten her. And if you continue on this path, if you force me to choose between my loyalty to the council and my mate bond, I promise you will not like the choice I make." Henrik stared at him in shock. "Your mate? The Alpha King has bonded with a Silverblood? This is treason, Dominic. This is everything we have worked to prevent." "This is justice," Dominic corrected. "This is ending a cycle of persecution that should never have begun. And if you cannot see that, if you cannot acknowledge that the Council has been perpetuating a lie for generations, then perhaps it is time for new leadership." The standoff held for a long moment, tension crackling in the air like lightning about to strike. Then Marcus spoke quietly from the side of the hall. "The records are being copied as we speak. Everything from the vault being sent to every major pack in the territories, to the media, to human authorities who regulate supernatural affairs. If anything happens to our Alpha, if the Council tries to cover this up, the whole world will know the truth about what you have done." Henrik's face went pale. "You would not dare. That information is classified, sensitive. Releasing it could cause chaos." "Then I suggest you do not give me a reason to release it," Cassandra said coolly. "Withdraw your enforcers. Agree to an independent investigation into Council actions regarding the Silverblood lineage. And most importantly, acknowledge that persecution based on bloodline alone is unjust and will no longer be tolerated." "You are making demands?" Henrik sputtered. "You are a confirmed Silverblood. You have no authority to make demands." "She has every authority," Dominic said. "She is my mate. She is an Alpha in her own right. And she has evidence that will destroy the Council's credibility if you push this. So I suggest you think very carefully about your next move, Henrik. Because if you make the wrong choice here, you will not just lose this fight. You will lose everything." The other council members were whispering urgently to each other, clearly trying to calculate the political fallout. The enforcers looked uncertain, caught between direct orders and the realization that they were facing not just a Silverblood, but a Silverblood backed by the Alpha King himself. Finally, Henrik spoke, through gritted teeth. "Fine. We will agree to an independent investigation. But Cassandra must submit to council monitoring until the investigation is complete. She cannot be allowed to roam freely when her power is clearly unstable." "My power is perfectly stable," Cassandra said. "But I will agree to monitoring, provided the monitors are independent observers, not council enforcers. And provided that this monitoring extends to all council members as well. If we are going to investigate misconduct, let us investigate thoroughly." Henrik looked like he wanted to argue further, but the other council members were nodding. They could see the political necessity of compromise, could see that pushing harder would only make the eventual fallout worse. "Agreed," Henrik said finally. "The monitoring will be mutual. The investigation will be independent. And if the evidence you claim to have is fabricated in any way, if this is an attempt to discredit the Council through deception, there will be consequences. I look forward to seeing you try to enforce those consequences," Cassandra said. "Now get out of my territory, and tell the Council that the days of easy persecution are over. The Silverbloods have returned, and we are not going quietly into extinction." The Council delegation withdrew, the enforcers moving carefully, keeping their weapons ready, but not aimed. The human with the scanner kept glancing back at Cassandra with a mixture of fear and fascination. As soon as they were gone. As soon as the gates closed behind them, Cassandra felt her knees start to buckle. Dominic caught her immediately, supporting her weight as the adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation drained away. "You did it," he murmured. "You faced them down, forced them to negotiate. That was incredible." "That was terrifying," she corrected. "I thought for sure they were going to attack, that we were going to have to fight our way out." "They might still attack," Marcus Ease said grimly. "This is not over. They will regroup, bring more forces, try to find a way to eliminate you that does not look like obvious persecution." "Let them try," Cassandra said, straightening up despite her exhaustion. "I am not the scared, hidden child my grandmother protected anymore. I know what I am. I know my power. And I have allies now. A mate. A pack. Resources I did not have before. She turned to Dominic. Thank you for standing with me, for putting yourself between me and them. You risked everything. I told you, he said simply. I choose you. That means I stand with you. Always. No matter the cost. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The independent investigation was launched with observers from neutral packs overseeing the process. The records from Cassandra's vault were compiled, verified, and presented to a tribunal of impartial alphas. And slowly, painfully, the truth about the Silverblood persecution began to emerge into public consciousness. There were those who refused to believe it, who insisted the records were fabricated, that Cassandra was manipulating events for her own gain. But there were also those who looked at the evidence with honest eyes and saw the uncomfortable truth, that the council had committed atrocities in the name of security, that innocent wolves had been murdered based on nothing but bloodline prejudice, that the entire supernatural community had been complicit in genocide through their silence and inaction. Cassandra became the face of this reckoning, the living proof that the Silver bloodline had survived despite everything. She gave testimony to the tribunal, answered questions from skeptical alphas, and slowly began building alliances with other packs who were willing to acknowledge past wrongs and work towards something better. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, but also deeply fulfilling. She was not just surviving anymore. She was fighting for change, for justice, for a future where wolves were not judged by their bloodline, but by their actions. And through it all, Dominic was beside her. Not just as her mate, though that bond grew deeper and stronger every day, but as her partner, her advisor, her anchor when the political storms threatened to overwhelm her. He used his authority as Alpha King to shield her from the worst of the council's attempts at retaliation, used his connections to rally support from powerful allies, and most importantly, he reminded her constantly that she was not alone in this fight. 3 weeks after the confrontation at her fortress, the tribunal reached its conclusions. The council would be restructured, new oversight committees would be established, and most importantly, the persecution of Silverbloods was officially declared unjust and would be immediately ceased. It was not total victory. There were still council members who disagreed, who would fight every reform. There were still wolves who viewed Cassandra with suspicion and fear. But it was progress. It was change. It was hope. Cassandra stood on the balcony of her fortress, looking out over the territory she had built, and felt her grandmother's presence like a gentle touch on her shoulder. You did it, child. You changed everything. You became what I always knew you could be. I could not have done it alone, she said aloud, knowing. Dominic was standing in the doorway behind her, listening. I know, he said, crossing the balcony to wrap his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. That is the point. You do not have to do anything alone anymore. You have me. You have your pack. You have allies across the territories. She leaned into his embrace, finally allowing herself to truly relax. What happens now? We have started a revolution, changed centuries of policy, made powerful enemies. Now, Dominic said, we build something better. We show them that Silverbloods are not monsters, that power can be used for good, that the old ways do not have to define the future. He turned her in his arms so she was facing him. And we live, Cassandra. We take time to just be together without crisis or danger or political maneuvering. We enjoy this bond we have built. We figure out what it means to be mates outside of survival mode. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. She had been in survival mode for so long, she barely remembered what normal felt like, what peace felt like. I am not sure I know how to do that, she admitted. Neither am I, Dominic said with a slight smile. But I think that is the point. We figure it out together. Make mistakes together. Build something real together. He kissed her softly, and Cassandra felt the last of her walls crumble away. She had spent so long protecting herself, hiding what she was, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be completely open with someone, to trust without reservation, to love without fear. I love you, she said, the words coming easily despite how foreign they felt in her mouth. I should have said it before. Should have said it the moment I realized. But I am saying it now. I love you, Dominic Thorne. I choose you. I will always choose you. His smile widened into something brilliant and unguarded. I love you too, Cassandra, my mate, my alpha, my everything. They stood together on the balcony. The sun set over the mountains. Two wolves who had found each other despite impossible odds. Two leaders who had changed the course of history. Two souls who had chosen each other and, in doing so, had chosen hope over fear, love over hatred, and a future that was finally, gloriously, their own. The key her grandmother had given her had opened more than just a vault. It had opened possibilities. It had opened truth. And most importantly, it had opened Cassandra's heart to the love and partnership she had never thought possible. The past had answered when she turned that key. But the future, the beautiful, uncertain, promising future, was still being written. And she would write it with Dominic by her side, with her pack supporting her, and with the knowledge that she was exactly who she was meant to be. Silver-eyed, powerful, unbroken, and finally, completely home.